Good day everyone, my name is Minda Pakatiu and for this video we're going to learn a new lesson about Gestalt-Insight Learning. So let's start. According to the Gestalt psychologists, notably Max Wellingmeyer, Wolfgang Kohler, and Kurt Kofka, certain features in visual perception are universal, so we can say that they are innate. They don't have to be taught. Such theories are known as sensual truth. Sensual theories are of a lower order of thinking than perception. To understand more clearly, let us briefly look at the experiment behind this tube. So one of the Gestalt psychologists named Kuller conducted several experiments on chimpanzee named Sultan. Sultan must put inside a cage and will be presented with a problem that is not easy to be solved, such as placing food in an area that is too high. To reach Collar would also place a box or sticks inside the cage to observe Sultan and the existence of insects, for instance, in one of the experiments. Fuller hung banana from the room of the keys of such a height that Sultan could not reach it, even by jumping up, so a box was also placed inside the beach after many attempts. To contemplate for some time, and suddenly Sultan used the box as a platform to reach the banana. This picture called he argued that it was not because of trial and error method for solving the problem but a sudden insight. After contemplating what is insight learning? So what is insight learning? Insight learning refers to the sudden realization of the solution of any problem, and it is eureka, or it is not the result of fire and error or responding to stimulus. It is cognitive experience to visualize a problem, things, and get insight or find a solution to solve a problem. The German word Gestalt can be translated by means, form, pattern, configuration. This configuration or patterns offers an organization, the perceptual which the individual experiences. Gestalt theories follow the basic principle that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. In other words, the whole picture of the car carried a different, altogether written meaning that its individual components, such as paint, canvas brush, or tire paint, make up respectively. Reviewing the whole cognitive process plays the mind makes a leap from understanding the parts, realizing the whole. Perhaps the best known example is the face profile, which is fully explained, and the 5 principles detailed for the following slides. However, it is important to note that while Gestalt psychologists call these phenomenal laws, or more accurate would be principles of perceptual organization. These principles are much like heuristics, which are mental shortcuts for software problems. There are several principles that just have to read defines. The main ones are law of similarity, law of approximity, law of continuation, law of closure, and law of figure and ground.
The first one is law of similarity. As Gestalt principles, through the principle of similarity, would seem to be one of the simplest graphs which see things that are similar are perceived to be more related than things that are dissimilar. Similarity occurs when objects look similar to one another. People perceive them as group or pattern. We would probably describe what we see as 4 rows of letter instead of 6 columns of letter, because we tend to group similar things into full set. That's the law of similarity. Similarity means there is a tendency to see groups which have the same characteristics. Pieces that are similar are grouped together, mostly vertical columns of circle and squares. The principle of similarity states that things which have visual characteristics such as shape, size, texture, value, or orientation is seen as belonging together. The next law is the law of proximity. Proximity occurs when elements are placed close together. They tend to perceive as a group. The principle of proximity or continuity states that things which are closer together will be belonging together. The position of elements help to portray a relationship between the separate parts. Things that are close to one another are perceived to be more related than things that are spaced partners apart, as this principle does not rely on any extraneous structure. It is among the first principles to impact our perception, and from which we believe understanding. All of us intuitively understand that the simplest way to indicate relatedness is to manipulate proximity that we might not intuitively understand. However, example, proximity clearly indicates relatedness and relative association. Near objects grouped together, we perceive one group or circle going vertical to the other horizontal. And another example is the 15 figures form a unified the shape of a tree because of their proximity. Elements that share uniform visual characteristics are perceived as being more related than elements with disparate visual characteristics. Next law is the law of continuity. Continuity occurs when the eye is compelled to move through one object and continue to another object. Objects are learned realities that have continuity because they easily make a home. Continuity occurs in the example because here in the example because the viewer's eye will naturally follow the line of view, the smooth flowing crossbar of the edge lead the eye directly to the muffler. Next example is these pieces in smooth contamination are grouped together. Most people view the lower line next to the red arrow as it continues. Next law is the law of closure. Law closure appears when an object is incomplete or a space is not completely enclosed. If enough of the shape is indicated, people perceive the whole by filling the missing information. In food, the principle of closure is much weaker when looking at the complex arrangement of individual elements. You mean saying the first look for a single recognizable pattern. Look for the example. Here, missing elements are supplied to complete familiar figure. We perceive an illusionary triangle and a pyramid in the spring. Next example. Although the panda here is not complete enough, its present for the eye to complete the shape is indicated or hinted. The viewer will substantially fill in the missing information. Same goes for this light bulb. Here for this example, clearly, there is nothing going on. There is no connection between the screw and the portions of the design. However, because of the implication, we perceive it to be true. We perceive a relationship between this man gap of his hand and the proof of this life. And the last law is the law of figure and ground. Our perception of the figure and ground relationship allow us to organize what we see by how each object relates to others. It allows us to determine what we're supposed to look at and what we might safely ignore. We do instantly and without effort in most cases, are we're often in familiar surroundings and looking of familiar things a simple example of figuring ground relationship. When we view a figure, this one face or wrist stand out in front of the background. This perception is not stable and oscillates back and forth between face and waist. Another example is balancing figure and ground can make the perceived image clearer. This one using an unusual figure ground relationship can add interest and submit to an image. In this image, the figure and ground relationship changes as the eye perceives the form of a shape of the syllable of X. For the conclusion, the Gestalt theory proposed that an individual is a whole person, and the instructional strategies used to teach them will help to discover if there is anything that is mentally blocking them from learning certain new information. Teaching strategies are used to present problems as a whole and to attempt to remove any mental block from the learner so that new information can be stored. That's all for our video today about the Gestalt Insight Learning. Thank you for listening.